So, Karma is one of the highest win rate units in patch 14.18, but when you play her, for some reason, you can't get top 4 of her. But don't worry my friends, because Exteria is here to teach you Karma Flex. In this video, we go over the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. The three main units we want to itemize for almost anything with Karma Flex would be Karma, Fiora, and Gwen. The best in slot for Karma would be to have a blue buff. This item allows her to keep casting over and over. And on top of that, for Chrono's case, is the faster you cast, the faster the Chrono will pop. Since Karma is an AoE unit, having an anti-heal item such as Red Buff is probably the best on her because it allows her to keep auto-attacking faster, so she can cast her abilities even more. And Death Cap is just to amplify her damage. If you cannot build blue buff, having a Spirit Soldier is fine, or even Adaptive Helm if you have to. If you can't build a Red Buff, Merlicon is a good substitute. And then for any amplification item that you can't build Death Cap, you can just build either Archangel Staff, Jewel Gauntlet, or even Nature's Tooth is fine. For her best artifact items, it would be hands down Blight and Jewel. This item is so broken on Karma that you will get 2 placements higher because that's just how strong this is. And Malazane is a pretty good item overall because she'll keep casting almost infinite. For Fiora, her best in slot, and this is mandatory by the way, that's why it's highlighted yellow, you have to have a Bloodthirster. This item is a good sustain item, pretty decent damage item, and it gives her a shield if she loses some HP. Therax is a good amplification item for melee units in general, that's AD, and because you need some defense, having a Titans is not bad to have. The flex items you can substitute that is not Bloodthirster because you have to build Bloodthirster on Fiora no matter what. If you don't, she can't really function as a unit. It would be to have either Edge of Night or even Hodge that you can take out either Sterak's or Titans for. But if you're gonna play her as like a secondary carry, having these clothes overall is really good on Fiora. If you cannot build Bloodthirster, you can just build these clothes and it's fine. Her best artifact item hands down is Silvermere. This item is just really cracked on Fiora because it gives her a lot of damage and it makes her ability basically one-shot everyone. A good melee item that you cannot really pass up would be Infinity Force. It's just good overall since it gives you every stat. And since Fiora does auto-attack a lot, having Mittens is not bad for that. For Gwen, her best in slot, and this is mandatory like the Fiora Bloodthirster, is to have a blue buff on her. If you don't have a blue buff on her, she can't really function as a unit as well because she needs to keep casting her ability to be stronger. And a good healing item would be Gunblade because she can heal herself and the board. And a good amplification item would be like a Death Cap. The best flex items you can put on her is if you can't build a blue buff, you can at least build Adaptive Helm, and specifically back row Adaptive Helm. If you put her in the front row, it just turns her into a tank, which is something you don't want. You want her to be like a unit that does a lot of damage. So you put her in the back row so it can give her mana and AP instead of just tank stats. And if you can't build a Gunblade, Bloodthirster Hodge is fine for that. And if you can't build a Death Cap, either Archangel Staff, Jewel Gauntlet, or even Crown Guard is very good for that. This item is probably like the most common thing you probably might put on Gwen because it's a good first item slam to put on your tanks for early game. And the best artifact items you can put on her is either having a Zonia's or even a Secret's Arm Guard to replace the Death Cap at least. In this patch, we are introduced to the Frying Pan. And the good thing about the Frying Pan is you can make a bunch of uncraftable emblems, but for this case is if you put a frying pan with a reforger, it will reforge it into a spatula, and you put a cloak on it, it gives you a witchcraft spat. And the good thing about this is playing vertical witchcraft with Karma is pretty good. Or if you're gonna play for the other synergy instead, which is having a spatula and you reforge it into a frying pan and you put a cloak into it, it makes it into a preserver spat, which is probably something you'd be playing a lot of instead of the witchcraft version. But either or is fine. So like basically saying the main emblems you want to play is either preserver or witchcraft, depending which style you can be playing. And this is a pretty good like spatula with frying pan mechanic to learn, so if you want to use it for other comps, you can do this too. For the units, this is the version I like to play. I like to play Honeymancy style. You can do a Zoe opener into a portal instead, but since Ziggs is actually very powerful at the moment, this is what I normally play. And for level 4, we like to play with Ziggs, which is a Karma item holder, so you can put like blue buff or Melicon on him. And then you have a Blitzcrank, that's a tank item holder with a Nunu or like probably Kog'Maw, just whatever other Honeymancy unit you can put in. And then Warwick, because Blitzcrank is a Vanguard with Warwick, and Warwick is a really good like frontline bruiser. He could hold on to Fiora items, which is like the Bloodthirster and Sterak's. But to level 5, because we're using Nunu here, you can throw in like a +1 Bastion, such as Shen or Poppy 2, or even like Lilia 2, or even like Hecarim 1. If you turn a 3 cost Bastion into level 2, you're just losing out too much money, so it's just better to keep them level 1. If, for example, you're using Kog'Maw instead, you can just throw in a Twitch, because you can throw in Frost later for level 6 with Warwick, Twitch, and then you throw in Zilly instead of Cassiopeia level 6. But in this case, since we're using Bastions, because I like to have more frontline than I do backline, just throw in a Cassiopeia till you have the +1 encounter with Ziggs at level 6. Essentially, pre-6, you could just use anything that you think is strong that could item hold. This is just an idea, you don't have to follow this to the exact. And at level 7, which is not really too important, you just throw in a +1 tank like Wukong or anything you can find. Or even Nico would be fine because you're going to use her anyways, because by the time you're level 8, you roll down for all your units. So since Ziggs was the item holder for Karma, you put the items on her. And then Blitzcrank was your tank item holder, which is going to transfer to Nasus. And you have like the other rest of the units such as Gwen. And then Warwick, since he was the Fiora item holder, you can put the items on Fiora afterwards after you find her. Shapeshifter, and the rest of the units that can fit the synergies, which is having a Nico is really good because you get Shapeshifter with Nasus, and on top of that you also get Witchcraft with Fiora, and you throw in a Bard, and Bard is a Sugarcraft with Gwen, so it gives Gwen more damage, and he's also a Preserver with the other two units such as Rakan and Zillion is also a Chrono with Karma. So you have a lot of synergies here on the board. And the thing to note with the Gwen, you can put her items on too, obviously, right? It's just usually the units that will item hold would probably be Ziggs. So if you want to transfer the items from Ziggs to Gwen instead, you can. You could just put like just an anti-heal on Karma, it should be fine. And if you want to play Gwen carry, that's up to you. Essentially, we're playing with 3 carries anyways, which is like Karma, Gwen, and Fiora. As long as they have items, you're kind of good to go. And then as long as you have upgrades, which is like Nasus and Rakan, because they're kind of hard to hit since they're 4-cost units, that's all you basically need. So you can fast 9. And by the time you're level 9, you just throw in a +1 Morgana. And on top of that, because you already have 2 Witchcraft at that point with Fiora and Morgana, you can take out Nico for Briar instead for a better unit. For your first item slams, I would suggest to slam either a blue buff or Spirit Soldier for the mana item. If not, you can slam damage items such as Jewel Gauntlet or Death Cap, because you can put either or on Gwen or even Karma, or either anti-heal items such as Morellicon or Red Buff, or magic resist shred items such as Static Shiv. This item is actually very important. You should build it almost every single time in any situation possible. If you're playing an AP board, always have this on the board and just throw it on like any unit that's a backline unit. Bloodthirsters are very good slam too, because this item is just very powerful in the current meta, and then it can go on Gwen or Fiora, or you can just slam random tank items such as Warmong, Sunfire, or Gargoyle Stoneplate, since these are very powerful for like an early game start, or even Crown Guard is very powerful. You can throw this on Gwen later. If you are really desperate and you want a win streak, Thieves Gloves is fine too. Thing to highly note is the Sunfire part is only good for first item slam if you just want to win streak. If not, just keep holding your items, because it's not worth it to do that, since having a Morellicon or Red Buff is way better than having a Sunfire, because having multiple anti-heals on the board doesn't really stack. There's alternative units you can use, but the core ones you should always play majority of the time would be like Karma, Gwen, Fiora, and Zillion. And you can flex between most of the units. The basic version is to have with the Nasus, Nico, Bard, and Rakan, which is the one I showed from last slide. If you're just unlucky, meaning that like if you just can't hit Nasus or Nico, you can just use Wukong or even Cassiopeia, so you can have pretty strong synergies on the board. This doesn't mean that you play this throughout almost the whole game. This is just to stabilize, and maybe if you're strong enough for whatever reason with this board, you can fast 9 and just play the basic board afterwards and just find a Morgana. If you have a Chrono emblem, you can just play full Chrono with Vex, Camille, and Jax, so you can have 6 Chrono there. You just throw a Chrono emblem on either Gwen or Fiora, whichever one you feel, and you just put a +1 like Rakan and Morgana, or even like a Bard, I guess, if you want to. I just prefer Rakan because you get more frontline, and he could basically be your main tank since you're not really using Nasus as a main tank. And then if you hit a Witchcraft spat, you just play Vertical Witchcraft instead, which is having a Cassiopeia, Nico, and Poppy, or even Zoe. And even if you can find a Morgana, that's good. If you can play 8 Witchcraft, you just basically win the game. But essentially the Witchcraft emblem would go on to the Karma, since she is actually really powerful with it. A good thing to know with the basic one is there is another like unlucky version. Is, for example, if you can't find a Fiora and you hit Olaf too, you can just use Olaf instead of Fiora, and then instead of Nico, you just throw in a Swain, so you can get 3 Frost with Olaf, Swain, and Zillion. So that also works too. So you can do a lot of mix and matching. Just try to figure out like what synergies is working with Karma, and then you're good to go. And the best augments we could choose from is combat bandages. In this patch specifically, they fixed the bug where it actually works now, so it's actually one of the highest win rate augments, so you could just choose that. And then combat caster is really good since you'll be casting a lot, so you can extra defenses. Spellblades is really good since you get a lot of damage. Unleash the Beast is very powerful for Fiora overall, so this is actually a good augment for her. High Voltage is a very good augment for Gwen overall and Karma, since they're both AP units. This magic resist shreds the board, and is actually a pretty good item holder with Gwen since it gives her AP and she's a frontline unit. Silent Hand is really good for just like any like 4-cost comp, because you can just throw this on Rakan or Nasus if you have to, or you can even throw it on Fiora, and since whoever holds this item gives them attack speed, you get some pretty decent stats with them. Big grab bag, never could go wrong with it. More items, the better. Preserver crest, because most of the time you'll be playing Preserver, this is really good for that. Good like meta augments such as Giant and Mighty is very powerful because it gives you pretty decent stats. New Recruit, since you get +1 unit, and you also get a Champion Duplicator. Support Golem, you can almost never go wrong with it because it's just a free unit and 2 free items. Immovable Object gives you a lot of defenses, so it's just really good for that. And for the augment order that I normally pick would be, for the first one is always Econ. If you can't find an Econ augment, you should always get an item one, because you can can temple quicker. And for your second augment, I like to choose item, but if you can't choose item, econ is also fine, or even power-ups, I guess. And third augment is always power-up with me no matter what, because if you don't have a power-up augment, you're not gonna do as much damage on the board. I keep saying the word tempo a lot, and this is how you do tempo. At stage 2-1, you want to level to 4. At stage 2-3, make 10 gold no matter what, because if you don't, you're gonna be poor for the rest of the game. But for whatever reason, if you have more than 14 gold, you can pre-level to 5, which it looks like this. So around stage 2-3, just put enough XP where you have 8 out of 10. By the time you hit stage 2-4, you hit level 5 instead. Unless you did the pre-level, then you don't have to do this. But if you didn't do the pre-level, then you want to hit level 5 at 2-4, which is right after carousel. At stage 2-6, always make 20 gold, or if for whatever reason you have a lot more gold, you can make 30 or plus 40. As long as you make it intervals in 10, that's all you need to do. At stage 3-2, hit level 6. This will keep your HP really healthy, and on top of that, you have better shop odds. At stage 3-7, which is basically around wolves, you hit level 7. At stage 4-2, hit level 8 and just roll for your board. Or if you're like super duper rich, you can do it at 4-1 instead, so you don't get contested too hard for your units. Alright, this is gameplay clip example number 1. And for our first augment, I instantly just pick up econ augment, which is Spoils of War, what I've been thinking, because if we have a lot of money, we get a lot of power. As we see here, my board is Bastion and Scholar, because Ari is a pretty decent carry, and this is actually an okay opener. The only issue is here, everything's level 1, so I decided just to slam a Merlicon, because Merlicon is a really useful item, and we can use it for later in the game. And a good thing to note down here is that I'm pivoting 2 Ziggs and 2 Blitzcrank, just in case if I do hit them level 2, I could just play this board instead. Since this is Gotopoto, we are going to be making a lot more econ, and as you can see here, if you can barely see it, at stage 2-3, I forced the 20 gold, because if you make the intervals of 10 gold at stage 2-3, you're going to be making a lot of money. During my carousel round, I got a tier because I had an extra bow left over, so I just forced a static shift, so we can keep win streaking with it. And as you notice here, we make a Ziggs 2 and a Blitz 2, which we'll probably play here later. Because we econ super duper well, we actually hit 68 gold at stage 3-1, and on top of that, the thing to note, it is Gotopoto, and since we actually have a lot of extra econ and I actually want to start win streaking so I can make more money, I leveled to 6 instead of 3-2. I did it at 3-1 because I saw a Honeymancy, so we throw in 3 Honeymancy and just a plus a random bunch of random units. For our second augment choice here, we either choose item or even combat. Since we chose econ as the first augment and we see combat bandages here, I just decided to take combat bandages because it's actually one of the most broken ones to pick right now. By the time we hit stage 3-7, as you see here, we hit almost like 80 gold and we're also level 7. So this means we have a lot of money, so we're probably going to be hitting level 8 at stage 4-1. And on top of that, because I did tempo, we save a lot of HP. I'm 72 HP instead of being down here at 46. As we see here, I have like almost 105 gold. I decided to hit level 8, and we decided to do our roll down. So by the time we hit 4-2, we finally get our third augment, and we see Combat Caster here, so we're going to keep it. And we decided to look for maybe an item augment, but we couldn't find it, so we decided to do double combat with combat bandages and combat caster. We did kind of roughly manage to hit a board here-ish, it's just everything is just level 1. So what I decided to do is, I'm probably going to be sacking here for a little bit, meaning lose a little bit, and then roll down for level 2s later. Okay, somehow I managed to win streak with this rough looking board, and right now I'm just rolling down to look for level 2s. At the time of this stage, for whatever reason, at 4-5, I had 40 gold, and somehow I still have 72 HP. I don't know how that even happened, but I've been just rolling down to hit my level 2s. As we see here, I've somehow managed to hit a Fiora 2 and a Gwen 2, which is very good upgrades, so for whatever reason, somehow I lost with it, but it's fine because after Raptors, we're gonna be rolling for a lot more and probably upgrade better units. So around the stage 5 area, we managed to hit most upgrades, which is Nasus, Fiora, and Gwen. They're level 2, but as we see here, Karma is not level 2. But it's okay, since backline unit level 1, it's fine, as long as the frontline units are level 2, and as we notice here, we BIS Fiora, and I transferred the Disclose item from Morgana to Gwen, and since we're not using Rakan, because we couldn't find them level 2, we're just using Morgana 1 instead. As we see here on stage 5-7, we've managed to hit Karma 2 because we hit level 9, and then we rolled down, and we also got a pair of Morgana. For the final round, we finally managed to hit everything level 2, even a Rakan 2, and since for whatever reason we had a lot of extra money, we decided to hit level 10, throw out a Xerath, and we just win the game overall with it because we had a lot of econ since we got Spoils of War, made us a lot of money, and we're also playing Scaldopoto, so we get a lot of econ, so we are not punished to make mistakes since we have a lot of money to roll for. So we started with game 2, we're actually picking our first augment, and technically it's not an econ augment, but it is a level augment, so it's kind of similar in a way. So we decided to take Epoch since it gives us XP and it also gives us some free rerolls. As we see here, I'm at 100% HP, and around stage 2-7, which is basically Krug round, we actually are at 100% streak because we're playing Honeymancy, since Honeymancy is very powerful in the current meta. And since we're playing the Orange Forge like portal, we managed to get a Mana Zane on Ziggs, and we slam Bloodthirster with Steadfast Heart, which is a pretty decent tank item, on Warwick 2. For our second augment here, we are seeing Portable Forge, so we decided to take it because it's an item augment, and the more items you have, the more powerful your board will be. For the Orange Forge item, we finally find Blight and Jeweled, which is the most powerful Karma item in the game, so we decided to take that. For our third augment here, we decided to go for Support Golem because it's a combat augment, so therefore we followed the format that I said earlier, because the first augment you take is like Econ, and the second augment you take is Item, and third augment is you take Combat augment. As you see here at stage 4-3, we managed to hit our whole board, but the issue is everything's level 1, but the bright side is we have a lot of HP, so we can choose this sack, save a lot of HP, and then roll for upgrades later. Around stage 5-2, I actually managed to save up to 50 gold, but we lost a couple HP and now we're at 52 HP. Because we lost the last turn and we're around like 37 HP now, we're kind of getting desperate here because we want to play for a top 4. Since 5th place right now is 15 HP, we wanted to roll for our strongest board, but the problem is we rolled down and missed almost everything. The only thing we hit was just a level 2 Gwen, and we still have a level 1 Karma with a level 1 Fiora. So we had to hopefully this would manage to make us get a top 4. So we actually got lucky, and the 5th place dude is actually down, so we're actually top 4, and we managed to hit a Karma 2 now and a Fiora 2 after like donkey rolling for a bit because we were really desperate and we wanted to play for top 4, so we managed to do that. But I wouldn't say this is the best way of like trying to win a game. This is more for like a lucky like top 4 because I was desperately rolling for level 2s and didn't hit, but we managed to win, so I'll take that as a W. Even though we super duper roll load our game, it's still fine in the end because we actually played really well in the early game, which caused us to get like a top 3. So that's a W in my book. So this is like very important to play the early game really well with econ management and on top of that with unit management. So therefore, because of my good early game, I'm just able to like get a top 4. And that is it for my Karma Flex guide. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.